Hello my friends, here we are, the last episode of A Look in the Dark. So it's the third part of chapter 22, The Letter. We finished up the last episode with Lady Bridford, Claudette actually, wondering about the romance between her son William, the nephew of Ricky Claymore, and this girl Sue, the Cockney girl who's now living on the estate. So there's romance in the air. Speaking of Claudette, we continue. Later that week, she looked out of the window of her bedroom to see her son William and Sue Parry sitting on the wall around one of the two ponds below, and the floodlighting lit up their faces, so that even in the evening gloom and without hearing what they were saying, she knew mutual joy and affection were flowing between them as gracefully as the water plumed and sprayed from the fountains behind them. She flicked the shutter of her mind's eye and captured that image in a mental photo album. It would always be there. "What are you thinking of, Claudette? Charles would never allow it," she whispered, but out loud she said, "Impossible." It was true that Charles was concerned about their younger son. True, William was a good lad. Well, all except that incident with the cannabis a couple of years ago. He was certainly a rebel like his uncle Ricky. You couldn't point William anywhere, because he was like an arrow with a slight curve in its shaft. Point it at the target and it would go off to some target point of its own. The curve in William was like his uncle, a free spirit unbounded by convention. He had a strong sense of right and wrong, but little sense of class. He'd always sought out friends in the village rather than among his own kind. Sometimes it worked out well. Just when the estate was much in need of publicity to boost visitor numbers, one of the tabloids got wind of his voluntary work at the local children's home. The half-page photograph of him lying on the floor of the playroom, while a little white girl and a little black boy tickled him, had won the heart of the nation, and the report of his love for these orphans at the home made even the hardened revolutionary feel that Sir William Claymore was a decent guy. William had been very embarrassed. He told his father he didn't know how the photo and story got out to the press. "Well, William," Charles had said, "I know we don't like to brag about such things, and especially from our position of privilege, but I have to say it has probably done more for the estate than that somewhat expensive advertising campaign we financed." Lord Charles also knew that his son would have been a problem in the regiment. He didn't take orders easily and would have been far too concerned about the welfare of his men. He'd read "Goodbye to All That" by poet Robert Graves, and was happy to quote it in showing how stupid he thought armies and war were. Of course, it was his uncle Ricky who'd sent him off to a new school term with a copy of that book to read it, and encouraged him to read it, and that was when he was 13. Charles also marvelled at the ease with which William got along with the estate staff. He didn't like the way they nearly all called him by first name, but he had not had either sons or daughters for playmates. There had been that recent incident when Poulter's son started bringing his school friends fishing at the lake. Charles didn't know how to handle it. Poulter was the best forester for miles, but he had a quick temper and the estate manager didn't want to lose him. William had heard about it, and he took the young son out on his yacht for a day and talked it over with him logically. He gave the lad permission to fish there himself. Most on the estate were allowed to, but only for himself, and the problem was solved. William knew that any young man would accept a bit of counsel far better if he was sailing off the Dorset coast on a summer's day. It was much more easy to take medicine with a very large spoonful of jam. So now there was this budding romance with the young filly from Clapham. It would have to stop. She was a sweet young lady all right, but it would never work, and it couldn't be allowed. "I mean to say," he had said over breakfast to Claudette, "he can't be serious about her. He must know better than that." But the truth is he didn't share his father's reservations, and he'd fallen for Sue as surely as if she were gravity and he was a stone. One November Sunday afternoon, Sue and William excused themselves after an excellent meal, walked around the lake and up onto the higher ground where there was a flat grassy spot, a summertime favourite picnic spot for the locals. Standing and looking back across the lake and down onto the house about 3/4 of a mile away, they stood in contemplative silence, locked in each other's arms, and watching a circling buzzard over some trees in the valley below. "Beautiful," Sue whispered, not wanting to disturb the peace with loud or numerous words. "Yes," he murmured back, and the buzzard moved closer, now using the thermals of the hillside to rise up in circles a little higher than where they stood. The buzzard called loudly, and somewhere in the distance behind them his mate's call returned faintly. Sue remembered Carol telling her that buzzards mate for life. "When I was a boy in the school holidays, I used to ride a horse up here really early in the morning, sometimes early enough to catch the dawn chorus. I used to see and hear badgers, foxes and deer. There was a feeling like heaven on those mornings. I knew a lad from the village, and he was called William too, but he was usually known as Bill. We used to sit in the branches of that beech tree over there and talk and talk. Bill wanted to see the world, so he joined the Merchant Navy. Funny really, Sue. He lived in one of our rented estate cottages. His dad was a cowman on the farm down there," he pointed. "I was envious of him. I had everything that money could buy, but his life was free and uncomplicated. Oh, and his parents are wonderful people. When he's home on leave, I always go over and spend an evening with them. Thing was, though, Bill could come here any time, but I was away at school for months at a time. He was free, and I think his education at the local school was just fine. What was it like for you, sir?" "Oh, I grew up in a really nice little terrace house. Dad could have bought it, but he wouldn't. Goes against his socialist principles. He really believes all things should be held in common. He's got more in common with Apache Chief Cochise than he does with your father." They both laughed, and Sue identified the tack-tack-tack call from the bushes as being a wren, and Winnie was impressed. "I had a good child. Mum and Dad are very happy together, and we did a lot of things as a family. Museums, art galleries, zoos, parks, gardens, historic buildings. London's a great place, of course, for all that. The last Saturday of every month we went somewhere, even if times were hard. We all love Regent's Park Zoo and Kew Gardens, so we went to those most." "What about school?" "Yeah, it was okay. I wasn't always a good child. Nothing too naughty. There was drugs, sex and rock and roll. Mostly I took the rock and roll." Sue was surprised at her own frankness. "My best friend was a black girl, and her parents were from Barbados. She had a really weird sense of humour, would have made you laugh on the way to the gallows. Well, her and me, we were in trouble for giggling more than anything else. I left at the end of the 6th year, but she did the 6th year and is at university now. I left at the end of the 5th year, but she did the 6th year and is at university now. We both worked hard for our 5th year exams, though." William had a look on his face that soon knew meant a change of subject. "Do you know what Mother and Father say about you, Sue?" Sue thought about the serious father and the beautiful friendly mother. "What?" "They think that you are part of the Ace Alliance." "You're joking. Wherever do they think a thing like that?" "They think Uncle Ricky's too. Mother describes you as a very intelligent and caring girl who would have been happy to get rid of all that evil." "What's his name, that evil person?" "Stanhurst." Sue coloured up when she realised how easily she'd betrayed herself. William gave her a broad smile and pulled her closer. "You know what I think? I think you and Ricky are Ace Alliance, okay? And I'm never going to ask you about it, but if ever you want to talk about it, that's fine. I agree with my mother, actually. She says that you're intelligent, caring and beautiful. And you are." He kissed her lips very tenderly. "I used to share all this," he pointed at the trees in the valley, "with Bill from the village, and I enjoyed that. But sharing it with you is perfection. It really is, Sue." She lifted her head up and looked into his eyes. He kissed her again, just as tenderly but longer, and as he kissed her he felt more strongly than ever that they were two souls who had to be one. "Sue," he whispered in her ear, "you've changed my world from a badly focused black and white picture to a sharp as a knife, full technicolor epic. Oh, will I love you. And I think from the day I met you. But no buts." "Well, how?" "No hows." "Yes, well, We have to see the reality. The reality that we love each other, that is. We don't have to rush things. Uncle Ricky says you'll be here for months sorting out things. He hopes you'll keep working for him and living in the lodge house after that. Sue, this is not the time, and it's not the place to propose. But I have a plan. You know how at school they want you to plan for the future career and all that? Sue nodded, and William continued. Well, I have to plan for you as my wife. Is that okay with you? Yes, Will, with me, but the family. Oh, your dad'll come round. Not mine, silly. Then she realised he was joking. Sue, one day I will propose to you properly, but in the meantime, let's say we have an understanding, and please take this in symbol of that. He took from his pocket a jewellery box, and when Sue opened it, it contained a necklace with a bird hanging on a gold chain. It's beautiful, Will. It's a chuff. Yes, it is. I sent it to a friend of mine in Cornwall. She makes them. It's the county emblem for Cornwall, although there are none there now. Once it looked as if they wouldn't survive at all, but they have. They will survive, and so will we against all the odds. I couldn't go back to life without you, and I'd give everything else up, all this, if I have to. And I mean it. Sue knew he did. I've heard Danny and Carol Green talking about the chuffs at South Stack on Anglesey, she said. Oh yes, the other two Ace Alliance members. Will. Sorry, no more speculation about that. Just remember that if you use your imagination, chuff rhymes with love, but it doesn't rhyme with but, and it doesn't rhyme with how. Danny Green was at his desk in the study trying to decide the best way to describe the mating activities of mallard ducks in a magazine column aimed at children. Carol arrived with the inevitable cup of coffee. Danny began to laugh. Do you remember, Carol, when we were walking along the banks of the River Frome and you were getting angry because you thought the mallard duck was trying to kill the missus? Whatever brought that to mind? Oh, just something I'm writing here. Carol smiled at the memory. I was so embarrassed you had to explain it. I was a bit naive, knew nothing about birds back then. And you a farmer's daughter. Oh, come on, pigs, cattle and sheep all do their mating on dry land, Dan. She hesitated, and then she took his hand and became serious. I was going to wait until we ate, but now seems an appropriate time to tell you. She pulled her husband's legs from under the desk and sat on his lap. Staring into his eyes from 2 inches away, she said, Daniel Green, writer and wildlife investigator, I have to inform you that the world had best watch out because we're expecting a new human next year. What? You mean I'm pregnant. Wow. I'm glad you said wow and not how. That's brilliant. That's the writer has one out of words, has he? Listen, Carol, I appreciate the coffee, but I think something a little stronger. Right now, downstairs, a very special meal is being cooked in honour of our young friend here. She patted her stomach. I've opened a bottle of that very special red wine Ricky brought us back from Spain. He said keep it for a special occasion. Well, this is certainly that. I'm having one very tiny glass, and that'll be my last alcoholic beverage until our win lands safely. You can celebrate to your heart's content on the rest of the bottle if you like. You'd better phone your mum. All in good time, Mr. Green, but not today. I'm dying to tell the family, and Ricky and Sue, but today and tonight is ours alone, just the three of us. I hope you're good at getting out of bed at 3 in the morning, and you will like changing nappies. You are 100% sure? Yes. I'm as sure as I am that I love you, my Englishman. Oh, and by the way, he was undoubtedly conceived in Ireland, and probably near the border town of Castle Doug. I'm claiming him or her. They're Irish. OK, order a tricolour blanket, why don't you, and really please your mother. Oh, Dan, she'll be over the moon. Bless you, my clever girl. Bless you. Bless me. I believe this required a combined effort, and really our contribution isn't so much. It seems to take less forethought than it does to bake a decent cake. It's a miracle, Danny boy, and all the explanations of science make it more, not less so. Yes, that's true. So what will we call it, this Irish miracle? Well, I love Irish names, but I thought maybe Theodore? Chapter 23. The book. Carol sat up in bed and called for her husband to come and join her. He replied that he would be just 5 minutes. It had been a busy day. Carol was now 6 months into her pregnancy, and the expectant parents had gone early into Bath and purchased some clothing and decorating materials in preparation for the day that the young person decided to venture outside of his mother's body and see what the great outside was like. All plans now involved 3, not 2 people, and though Carol seemed well in every way, Danny fussed about her even more than usual, feeling the delicacy of her situation far more than she ever did. Not once did she complain about the extra attention and consideration, but rather let it amuse her. She was determined that everything about this child would be a combined operation with the exception of feeding, and she was enthralled at her husband's interest in each stage of her pregnancy. She was sure that his righteous instinct would have been noting it all down somewhere, and she was absolutely right. Tonight's news had been encouraging. Stanhurst had been sentenced for life for the murder of Theodore Adrius, and a long list of other charges had all been considered. In his summing up of the case, the judge, Mr. Justice Palmgrove, had highlighted that John Fuller, alias Major Stanhurst, was a man devoid of all normal feelings for the sacredness of life. Not only had there been no consideration in your actions for the welfare and the preservation of every kind of animal you could personally profit from, but even more seriously, you've murdered a decent citizen of this country who worked hard and was loved in his community. And had it not been for this man, Theodore Adrius, acting in such an unselfish and outstandingly brave manner, you would have succeeded in killing police officers and possibly others. Indeed, you've already injured 2 members of the Metropolitan Wildlife Crime Unit. It seems that both the community and the world's wild creatures need protection from your cruel campaign of violence and pillage. I'm recommending that you serve at the very least 20 years imprisonment. The judge went on to praise the valour of Mr. Adrius and the police officers involved, and poured lavish praise on the almost mythological Ace Alliance for their amazing work in uncovering a global syndicate of frightening proportions, spreading a cancer-like grip on the very lifeblood of the planet. As Carol thought about the results of the trial, she was reminded of the cold, steel blue eyes of Major Stanhurst, and a shiver like an electric shock ran through her body. She turned her thoughts away from the court case and wondered about Sue Parry and William Claymore. Against all odds, she knew it was a romance that just had to work. She really believed that they could live in a stately home or a caravan and still be happy together. She felt that they were like her and Daniel, just designed to be together, like music and dance, or blossom and bees. She smiled as she thought about the support William's Uncle Ricky was giving them, and thanked God for having such good friends. As Daniel entered the room, he broke in on her thoughts. "What have you brought that to bed for?" he said, pointing at the small red book on the bed. "I'm going to read it, Danny boy." "Listen, Carol, David Lack was a clever chap, and The Life of the Robin is a great work of science, but it's too dry as a read for you. If you want a really good birding book to read, I'll get you Eric Hoskin's An Eye for a Bird." "No, it's okay." "Listen, Carol, this is pure scientific survey stuff. In 1943 it was amazing, but honest, it's not for you." "Listen, Danny boy, this book came to me this morning as a result of the police taking up our investigation. At first I was a bit annoyed by the fact that they tracked us down, but now I'm pleased. Really, they're just saying that they know who we are and they appreciate what we did, and nobody will ever be told. It's a token of appreciation, really." "Well, that's what I tried to tell you this morning." "No, you said, 'Leave it, Carol, let it rest.'" "Well, you were getting rather worked up." "I felt intimidated, upset, but I know I was being over the top and unreasonable. I realise that now." "You were a bit prickly this morning, like a cacti." "Sorry, Dan. I think it's the hormones. I love you so much, but this morning I could have smashed your wee face in." Carol said it with such sweet affection it made him laugh. Oh well, the Fighting Irish and all that. As was his custom, Danny moved to the window and opened it a bit. He called Carol to the window to see the very brightly polished moon. She joined him with a little red book in her hand. She'd made her mind up that before delivery of the baby she would read it from cover to cover. It had come by recorded delivery in the Morning Post, and had a little type note on the Scotland Yard notepaper attached to it. It was, of course, the second book that Carol had asked Thanos to obtain, just in case she needed an excuse to return. She didn't know how the police had correctly connected her with the book, but she guessed there was something written in the records at Thanos' office identifying Mrs. McGovern as Northern Irish, and that the detectives had put the facts together. She didn't know, of course, that Sue had spoken to Inspector Hutchins and Sergeant Bennett about the far braver Ace Alliance woman who had actually visited Thanos at his office. It had not taken a genius to realise who the book really belonged to. Carol opened the book for the first time as she moved closer to her husband. She was amused by the author's dedication inside. Turning another page, she came on a handwritten message to all of them, that is, the Ace Alliance. Carol read it silently. Dear Carol, Danny, Sir Richard and Sue. Many years in the police force have shown me how much evil there is in the world and how much the human mind can twist things to conceal the truth for evil ends. Please forgive an old cop nearing his retirement if I've spoiled myself with the pleasure of discovering the truth about those who hid the truth with good motive rather than bad. I've been much impressed by the work of the Ace Alliance and share your delight in the results of your clever investigation. Be assured of my discretion. Only 2 people in the entire police force know your identities, myself and Sergeant Bennett, the young man who owes so much to your poor friend Theo. We have visited the grave and we appreciated your tribute to him and agree with you that he is indeed a king. I love this country and indeed the whole planet, and it gives me much pleasure to know there are people like you 4 out there. If at any time myself or Sergeant Bennett can be of any service to you at all, please contact us without hesitation. We will contact you if we feel there's a way you can help us. I do not know if the 4 of you are religious people, but I have in my prayers thanked God for your decency. Much thanks to you all and God bless you. Chief Inspector Royston Hutchins and Detective Sergeant Bennett. Under the printed names there were signatures of both Hutchins and Bennett. Carol was too choked up to speak. She handed it to Danny Green and drew his attention from the moon back to the earth. He read it and shook his head in wonder. He drew his family closer, kissed his wife on her lips, smiled and stared into her watery green eyes, and then said in a soft but strong voice, "We did it, Carol. Bless you, darling. We did it." So there it is, my friends. The end of A Look in the Dark. Would you believe that I've read to you, if you've been patient enough to listen to all the episodes, 135,000 words to this novel? I really wonder how, between all the other things going on, I ever got time to write it, because I wrote this before I was sick and was very busy all the way through. But it just shows if we feel strongly about something and we want to get it written, we can. I think we've all got books in us if we only made the time to write them. It's lovely to share it with you, and I'll have other things to share, I'm sure. You're all very patient. Thanks so much for listening, and look forward to talking to you soon. But in the meantime, lots of love, lots of peace, and greetings to you from both Kate and myself. Bye bye for now. Bye bye.